All right, are we good to go, Katie?
Oh, it's starting. Give me just 1 minute. Let's see what's going on here.
So it's recording on my end.
Oh, it does?
Yep.
Oh, recording, yes. For some reason it's not live streaming.
Maybe because you're not, you make you host again?
I am host.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure what the error is, or I'm getting an error message.
Just try again, and if not, that's okay. We'll post the recording later.
Yes. Okay. I'll keep trying.
All right, good deal. I think we're good to go, John, when you're ready.
Well, we'll call the meeting to order. With us, the commissioners are Mary Peniston, Kelly Bloom, and where is Joe? David will be joining us shortly. And any public participation, I can't see the guest list out there.
No, we don't have anyone on the waiting list.
Nope, nobody on the waiting list.
Nope.
We'll go to item 4, administration, approval of the minutes. Approve the minutes of May 10th, 2022, regular meeting. Does someone make that motion?
I can move to approve the minutes.
Okay,
I'll
I'll
second.
okay. All in favor? I'm sorry, any changes, deletions? No, nothing? All in favor? Unanimous? Next item of business are the financials. Will someone make a motion to approve the Norwalk Redevelopment Agency Statement of Revenues and Expenditures for Operating Fund 100 year to date, April 30th, 2022? Someone make that motion? Good. Thank you, Kelly. I second it. Eugenia? Your mic's off.
You're muted.
You're muted.
Thank you.
Those were words of wisdom you just spoke.
For the year-to-date period ending April 30th, the operating fund 100 had actual revenues of $1,183,000 versus budgeted revenues of $1,184,000, which resulted in an unfavorable variance of $1,000. The actual expenditures of $1,200,000 versus budgeted expenditures of $1,182,000 resulted in an unfavorable variance of $18,000. This is due to an unfavorable variance of $28,000 in personnel expenses, offset by a favorable variance in administrative expenses of $10,000. The net actual operating deficit of $17,000 versus a budgeted operating surplus of $3,000 resulted in an unfavorable variance of $20,000.
Okay. Any questions? Thoughts, comments? None? All in favor of approving the statement of revenues and expenditures?
Aye.
Unanimous? We'll go to financials item number 2, which is our operating budget for 2022 to 2023. I went over this with Brian. I'm okay with it, but I guess since we talked, there are some changes and Brian will explain it to us. Brian?
Oh, he has to unmute himself.
Can you hear me?
Now we can.
Yes,
All right, sorry, I'm dancing with some of these screens here. Can you see my screen?
yes.
All right, good deal. All right, well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the budget that's actually included in your packet is the correct budget. And I'll kind of walk through what's going on for this fiscal year. Obviously, this is the time of year. We're approaching July 1, which is the start of our fiscal year. So I'll kind of catch you all up. And what we did is a year-over-year comparison, so you can sort of see the variance for our various positions throughout the year and how we intend and project to operate. So Most of the budget is structured. Obviously, the revenues are coming mostly from grant resources that have some level of variability. Some of the CDBG CV admin is actually going to be, falling off this year because that program is sort of a horizon setting down over now that the coronavirus has been relatively addressed from the federal perspective here. We do expect additional funds from the EPA. This is from the grant we got for the 30 Monroe project. ARPA funding from the city. This is actually 1 year of a 3-year number. We were allocated $144,000 for this business development center that we've been operating at a 3 Belden Avenue as part of the ARPA program. That's a large component of what's going to be offsetting some of our increased occupancy expenses, which I'll go over in a little bit here. We received additional resources for our management of the MLK facade improvement program. Some of those projects we'll actually be discussing tonight. What's not included here and what's notable is expected grant revenues for the DECD Community Challenge grant that we received. We actually have a $225,000 proposal, or actually as part of the budget we have submitted to DECD, and they're currently finalizing and reviewing that. So we didn't want to include that here at this time, just until that number is actually solidified. And also $150,000 that we worked into the negotiation for the LDA, which was recently approved by the Common Council for the Spinnaker deal that we've been working on at 30 Monroe. So what you'll notice, and I'll go into it a little bit later, not all the grant revenues are reflected just because we wanted to present to you what we could reasonably expect before we actually finalize those agreements, but those are expected. In terms of the overall expenses, you'll notice the notable increases are in terms of personnel. We brought on, as you recall, through some email exchanges a number of months back, I think in the winter, we brought on another position to help deal with some of the new grant programs, reporting, and all the new revenues that we've been receiving. That's probably the largest component of this. I am proposing, as given what's been going on in the world with inflation and some of the macroeconomic conditions that are affecting staff, a 5% increase across the board as part of this budget this year. And that's in line with some of the other city positions that we fund and what they've received. And we could talk about that as needed. In terms of expenses, what the most notable are in relation to occupancy. And that's obviously because we're maintaining 2 offices right now. But $144,000 of that is actually coming from the city. So although we're incurring more expenses, we have new grant revenues to offset them. So what you'll note at the bottom here is what we're projecting as a deficit, but with the new grant revenues that I was talking about, that will be reflected. We feel like we'll be able to offset that over the course of the year, or at least come close to that. So I'll take any questions that you all have. Happy to go over anything in further detail.
How reasonably sure are you of these other grants coming in?
Yeah, so the DECD one, we've been awarded. We've had all the press events. That's secured. That is definitely just, we need to figure out the exact number with DECD. We had to move a couple things in the budget. So I'm pretty certain on that one. And then in terms of the 150, it's going to depend on successful negotiation of the LDA with Spinnaker. We have a successfully negotiated term sheet, and we should know in the next 2 months what that looks like to offset some of those expenses. In the event that not, obviously we have our cash reserves that would cover this revenue, which is strong.
Okay.
Brian, what was the position that was added? And could you say more? I'm sorry, I'm not up to speed on why there's 2 offices being maintained.
Yeah, no problem. So we added on last December a development manager position. And that was just in recognition that we received a number of new grants, a number of new project management responsibilities. That was Mark Dillon, who we brought on. And your other question was, and I apologize. Oh, in terms of the why we're maintaining 2 offices?
Yes. And which is the primary office right now?
Yeah, so I think primary office, from relation to me, is at 50 Washington, but we pretty much split across the 2 pretty evenly. We have our offices at 3 Belden that's been converted into a small business development center. We've been working with the city to provide business assistance for low-income women, minority-owned businesses that may not have access to typical office space. So we're actually hosting the NAACP in one of the offices. We are going to be hosting Kiva, which is a commercial lender that the city contracted with to provide micro loans to commercial businesses. We actually were just involved in the recruitment for that position. It's a city-funded position, but they will be officing out of there. And then we're still working to structure sort of the remaining space in terms of what, organizations that will take occupancy there, but we're kind of looking at it as a small business incubator. And that's funded through the ARPA program with the city. And then we also have our back office staff. There's the Eugenia offices there with Lena, accounts payable, and Katie.
So you're at 50 Washington.
Correct.
Thank you. And will both of the offices be maintained, or will the Business Development Center shift over to a different cost center?
Yeah, so we have a lease over at that other center through February 2024. So the program's funded through then. And then we'll take a look at its success and if it makes sense to keep that going over there. But our plan is to, what we plan to do is hopefully, look towards consolidation of operations at that time.
Thank you.
Yep.
How long is our lease on the existing building?
You mean at 3 Belden?
Yeah.
Through February 2024.
Okay. Any other questions? We have to approve the fiscal 2022-2023 operating budget. I make the motion. All in favor? Carries unanimously.
Did we have a second on that? I apologize.
Yes.
Okay. Who was it? I didn't see it.
I thought it was Kelly, but I'm not positive.
David's raising his hand.
Okay, great. Thank
Oh,
you.
you can see David. I can't. Moving on to business item number 5. A is the Brownfield Area Wide Revitalization Planning Grant. And first item there, I'll turn to you, Brian.
Great, thank you. So what we're requesting today is authorization to apply for a grant to the Department of Economic and Community Development as part of their Brownfields planning program. We need to obtain a certified resolution from the board authorizing our application. We're requesting $200,000 in assistance to do really a 3-task project. The first task is to update the city's GI inventory for brownfields. We have one from 2008. It was sort of briefly updated in 2019, but what we want to do is sort of take a look at that, survey it, and then bring it into the GIS environment. So actually map those locations and then actually reference as the second task, try to obtain as many documents as we can from the state and geo-reference those to the actual points so that, licensed environmental professionals in the area or developers will have access to an online portal for some of the environmental documents that they use. This is actually modeled after a similar project that I received funding for through this exact program in Bridgeport. And they found it pretty helpful to have all that information consolidated in one point. And the remainder of the grant will be used for some GIS-based analysis to kind of help us do some site selection in terms of what brownfields we should be prioritizing for development. The match will come from the agency in the form of CDBG funding, as we'll be allocating towards that match. So the total project will be $220,000 because there's a 10% match required for this program.
Any
Just a
questions?
quick question, is the GIS system, is the information in it open to the public?
The plan is for that to take place, yes. We're gonna have to compile it. We'll put together a web-based application and then make that available to the public.
And what's the timeline for this system and when it would be made public?
Well, for award grants, I would say somewhere between the 12 to 18 month timeframe.
For the award of the grant or for the completion of the project? I'm sorry.
For completion of the project. So for upon, whenever the grant's awarded, probably 12 to 18 months from there.
So this will be hosted on the city's GIS system, Brian?
Yeah, we're gonna have to work out specifically where it's being hosted, but I would actually assume it's probably co-located across ours and the cities. Will have a portal to the city's application.
Okay.
And really what it is, the real value and the meat of it is the data that underlies, that we're creating, and that can be hosted anywhere as needed.
Any other questions?
Good. I'm happy to make the motion.
Is it seconded?
I'll second.
Kelly seconds, all in favor? Unanimous. Moving on to item B, the MLK Facade Improvement Grant Phase 2, Property Review and Recommended Funding. Item number 1 is to approve the funding for the above listed projects in the MLK Facade Improvement Grant. Brian.
All right, great, thank you. So as I mentioned, sort of when we were having the discussion about the budget, the agency has been tasked as part of the MLK Corridor Initiative that the city is leading to manage and administer the facade improvement program. So that's something that we've been working on through our CDBG, but this is actually state funding, state resources that were provided to the city. And given our expertise and experience in this, we've been asked to continue in that administrative capacity. As you'll recall, last year we did about 7 applications. We did about 7 projects for various facade improvements, whether it be roof, siding, windows, and the like. Most of those were all the owner-occupied applications that we received. So now we're moving into the landlord-owned, renter-occupied units. Trying to target low-income renter-occupied units for improvements. The package before you today represents proposed improvements to 24 units across 8 properties. There is a map of those properties included in your packet. I believe it's on page 13. And what we're requesting today is the authorization to expend $450,000 of the grant resources. The projects have already been reviewed by the MLK committee, working with Jess Vonashek, Darlene Young, and going through them and sort of prioritizing the improvements. We all feel like these, meet the requirements. We've actually developed a rubric to score these projects as, primarily will be used once, resources become a little bit more thin. We currently have about $1.25 million in funding that's available. So for this batch, we're proposing a phase funding of $450,000 in terms of the allocation. We still will need to go through and refine some of the scope. So we've approved it at the maximum for some of these projects. Others, we think that the proposal, they won't require the maximum. In terms of the maximum that's included in the guidelines, it's $25,000 available per unit, up to $100,000 per property. So we feel that your approval of utilization of the $450,000 to execute these agreements that will be negotiated per our typical process will help. It will accommodate the improvements necessary at all these projects. There's detailed descriptions of each project and their estimated funding source and number of units included on page 14, and pictures as well. So happy to answer any questions you may have.
Color, you're on mute.
All right. No.
Brian, I'm sorry. Forgive me for asking so many questions. The 1.25 million, is that over what period of time is that?
Well, it's really, I believe it's from a number of different sources. So it's going to depend on what portion of the funding, but we're estimating about 3 years.
And can you give me a general idea of what the sources are?
Yeah, so a portion of it is coming from ARPA.
Okay.
The other portion is from funds contributed by GGP when they built the mall. So about $500,000 is from the GGP and $750,000 is from ARPA. The $750,000 is going to be positioned for grants, and then we're reserving $500,000 of this time for loans.
Okay, so the time limit for the ARPA money, isn't that sometime in, is it October 1st, 2024? Is that when you have to spend the ARPA monies by?
Yeah, it's on the city side in terms of that. We're expecting to spend that within a year and a half.
So will you be coming back? Because right now, or have you already spent part of the 1.25 million?
We have not. We used, for the first round, we used CDBG funding. So we'll be coming back with another round.
Okay. So 450 of the 1.25, and there'll be a second round.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Any other questions? Seeing none, who will make the motion to approve funding for the listed projects?
I'll move.
Seconded. David? All in favor? Aye. Carries unanimously.
Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, before we move on, I just want to notice you all, you may have received an invitation. We're working with the city to do an MLK corridor initiative, open house, sort of a ribbon cutting and kickoff, and these projects will be a part of that on next Wednesday. It's actually scheduled from 10 to 12. If you need the invitation, we're happy to send that out. It'll be at the South Norwalk Library. We expect to have a nice speaking program with Senator Duff, Reverend Clark, and obviously a number of city officials. And we're going to be going over the entire MLK corridor initiative, all the different projects that are being funded. There's really a lot of good work that's going on, from infrastructure to, to the facade improvement program. So if you're able to attend, I would encourage you. It'd be great to see you all.
All right.
Yeah, could you forward that invitation or?
Yep,
send that?
absolutely. We will send it on over.
We covered item C, correct? No, we didn't. Connecticut Community Challenge Grant Application submitted.
Yeah, so what I wanted to do, I know I provided a general update at the last meeting, and I think I wanted to kind of do more of a deep dive so you had an idea what was going on with that $6 million grant, as I know Mary had requested. And I think it would be helpful for everyone to get kind of on the same page as we negotiate this overall project here with the state. So I'm going to share my screen real quick one more time. Sorry, I think I lost my PDF. Give me one quick second here. All right, are you seeing a map?
Yes.
We are.
All right. So I included the entire community challenge grant that we submitted in the packet. It's rather long, so I'll try to kind of provide a brief overview here in terms of what the improvements are and how they're being divvied up by the state. So the program is really focused on infrastructure, and it's tied intrinsically to the proposed development at 1517 Chestnut. And I'm not sure how involved, Mary, you were with the South Norwalk TOD plan, but this was sort of one of the plan recommendations that came out in terms of implementation. And what it is Spinnaker owns the parcel right here at the corner of Henry and Chestnut. And what we're talking with the city and have negotiated with the city is the actual disposition of a portion of land in the South Norwalk surface parking lot, 60 parking spaces to be exact, that will be resited into the new project at 1517 Chestnut. Of 200 mixed income, mixed use units here right at the corner, with structured parking to accommodate the development program, as well as the replacement of these parking spaces. Recognizing, and as part of the South Norwalk TOD station area plan that we developed, infrastructure is a concern that we heard loud and clear at the public outreach meetings. And we really feel that this is a good opportunity for us to address it and hopefully minimize the impacts of any future development. So what we proposed is a project that is focused on primarily streetscape sidewalk improvements, as well as investments in affordable housing in terms of sort of similar to our facade improvement program for adjacent multifamily affordable housing projects that are in need of rehabilitation. The primary cost components are going to be the construction of Station Place, which is it currently operates as the access to the station, but we will formalize that connection. And I'll show you a design, like sort of a preliminary design that we did use to submit for the application. Looking to underground utilities or support surface level improvements for the undergrounding of utilities along Chestnut to Henry, sidewalks all the way to Henry Street. And we're going to be designing these projects to see how far we could take it along Chestnut, MLK, Monroe, and Henry to make those sort of surface level improvements to sidewalks, green infrastructure, and utilities in the area. Again, like I said, it's kind of tied to this public-private partnership that we've been negotiating with Spinnaker. We have an approved LDA term sheet that was just approved by the Common Council at their last meeting. They're currently in due diligence. We've actually begun environmental remediation work. We received a $500,000 EPA grant to clean up the site at 30 Monroe. We were actually out there today, meeting with EPA and the developer. They're in the phase of due diligence, trying to kind of do their site planning, take a further look at the site that they may be, acquiring. And there'll definitely be more details to come on the negotiation of that LDA as things go forward with this public-private partnership. Concurrently, we're negotiating the agreement with DECD for the specific grant. The sort of crux of it, and it's been discussed with the city already, is that the funds are tied to the completion of these units. This is a new requirement from DECD that they want to have some sort of completion guarantee. The developer has expressed openness to accommodating a portion of that. We've been working with City Corporation Council to define exactly what that looks like. So what we'll be bringing forth, ultimately what we want to obtain is approval and authorization to execute that grant agreement. Before I kind of go into those details, I'll go through the project more, and then we could come back to that because there's kind of a lot to unpack there. But in terms of the overall project design, this is sort of an aerial view of the city-owned land. If you look at this dotted line here, this is the portion in which that the development will occupy on the city-owned parcel, and some preliminary concepts for the actual route alignment of Station Place. So before I go on to the sort of grant terms, are there any specific questions in terms of the overall project or some of the things that we're trying to fund?
I
Will
just
the
got a
city
comment.
continue, will the city
Go ahead,
continue to
Mary.
own that piece of property that's on the city land? And is that going to be for parking, you said?
No, that'll actually be sold. So it's about 46,000 square feet will be sold to the developer as part of the land disposition agreement. And that will be, portion of it will be parking at the ground level, but there'll also be about 76 units constructed on that portion of the site.
And is the mix of housing there with the 10% workforce affordability?
Yes.
So Brian, is this paying for some of the improvements to the Station Drive, the circle turnaround and all that?
Yes. Yeah, that's probably gonna be the largest cost component, is constructing that. And the way we structured the financial plan, it was fortunate because this program required a 50% match. So we were able to actually value the donation of that land to create Station Place as a portion of that match. So it was about $1.35 million is our preliminary estimate.
I was just going to note that I joined the Common Council in 2011, and I was shown these plans back then, and I've been working on them forever. I'm glad to see them finally coming to fruition.
So we're using part of the value of the land for the match.
Exactly. Yes.
The Spinnaker's off the hook for paying for that.
Well, no, it's gonna be a public right of way. So they're not actually that's gonna still be retained as public access.
Oh, you're talking about you're not talking about the part of the land where they're building a building.
No, they're paying for that fair market value. It's valued at $4.6 million.
Great. Okay. Yeah, no, that's fine. I see.
Yeah.
Any other questions? None? Moving on.
If there's none on that, I actually was going to suggest that if I could just go into the grant a little bit further, John, just so we could kind
Okay.
of talk about that. If you'll give me one quick second, I want to pull up. Are you guys seeing the map still?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, just give me 1 second here. And David, I think this might help. I have a letter from the state showing the grant award, and I think this might help kind of unpack the financial plan, what we did to get to that overall $12 million project. But let me share it real quick. Are you seeing a letter
Yes.
dated April 6th, 2022?
Mhm.
Yes.
Okay, so here's our award letter. So this is to your question, John. You know, we've been awarded a grant in the amount of $6 million. Some of the requirements are tied to the development and the delivery of 200 mixed income units. And I think the tricky part about this is obviously we're dealing with city land, or obviously the Norwalk Redevelopment Agency. So we're really acting as the city's business agent in some of this. So I know in some of the past transactions that have occurred, the redevelopment agency was probably it was the primary economic development arm of the city. So it made sense to transfer some of the land. We don't envision this land ever transferring to us or having to do a tri-party agreement. What we're really doing is representing the transaction in the partnership between the city of Norwalk and Spinnaker. So that's part where the grant revenues that I talked about for the $150,000 for my time, legal fees and the like have been baked into the LDA. So we're operating more in a business agent capacity for this grant. We will be receiving a financial assistance proposal, but I wanted to get, what I'm hoping to get is authorization from you all to execute the financial assistance proposal once we receive it and negotiate it, because it's going to be very dependent upon the city and their legal counsel and corporation counsel, who we've been actively working with to negotiate that, because it's obviously tying them to a number of assurances that need to be made for the completion of a project on their property. But I'll still, as their business agent, probably be the one to execute it since the grant is coming to us. So it's sort of complicated in terms of the overall flow, and I can answer any questions. But the first point is, and to David, to your question, this is the sort of sources and uses of funds for the grant. So we've proposed an overall $12 million project because it required a 50% match and 50% grant. But we were able to sort of be innovative in our way of structuring that overall deal. So we have the $6 million in grant funding that's coming from DECD. We were able to secure $3 million in cash match in the last budget. So that's in the capital budget already, and that's straight cash. This is the 1.35 million that I mentioned with the land for the donation to Station Place. We were able to further leverage our cleanup grant money that we received from EPA. If you recall, we received a $500,000 grant. $100,000 from CDBG funds were used to match that grant, but they're allowing us to credit that for this program. And then as part of the transaction that we've negotiated with Spinnaker, we had to come up with a value and cost for the public parking. You know, structured parking is obviously very expensive. It's estimated about $35,000 a space. So the actual value of how much money that they could obtain from, you know, the revenue, and we sort of valued what the city's currently obtaining and placed a value on that, was roughly 50% of the cost to actually construct that garage. We estimate the 60 replacement parking spaces to cost about $2.1 million. But we were able, the credit that we would be giving them to build that, we were actually able to use as a contribution. So we were able to generate another $1 million back for that project through the use of those funds. So that's that 1.05 number there to make up the $2 million.
That's helpful. One question, the brownfield monies that the cleanup's going to be spent on, is that on the city land that we're selling to Spinnaker, or is that on the whole Spinnaker site?
It's on the city land. It's on 30 Monroe. It's actually that small, we were just out there today with our environmental consultants. It's that small portion that kind of dovetails towards Ely, you know what I mean? Towards that backside, the thin parking area. That's where the cleanup, there was already cleanup work that has been performed on the land that we're selling.
What was there? What is still left to be cleaned up?
It's that small portion. There's a few hot spots that they had identified.
Huh. Do you remember what kind of contamination it is?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I can get that for you. We literally looked at the well points today where they did the borings. We have the whole environmental assessment work.
Okay, thanks.
I want to say it's something to do with metals, but I don't want to misspeak.
Any other questions? Any other updates?
I guess the question I have for the group then is, you know, we're expecting our financial assistance proposal in between our meetings here. And rather than have to delay till the next meeting, if I would request just authorization to sort of execute this agreement for the grant pending legal review by not only us, but City Corporation Council. And if everyone's comfortable, for me at least to have authorization to sign.
Okay, so you need a motion and approval.
Yeah, the motion would mirror something similar to what we just had for the last grant, just to authorize the executive director to enter any and all agreements related to the Connecticut Community Challenge Grant.
Brian, I'm sorry for being a bit thick-headed, but would you mind explaining again the 1.05 million transaction? I'm not exactly sure I understood that one.
Yeah, no problem. So basically what it is part of the project, Spinnaker has to replace the 60 public parking spaces, but they're going to be replacing them in structured parking. So we had to figure out the cost of that. So the cost of that exceeded the value of the parking area ultimately. So the cost of it was about $2.1 million to replace 60 parking spaces. That's 60 parking spaces times $35,000 a space is how we got to that number.
Okay, I got that math. And where is this new parking going to be?
In the building, in the new building. And it'll be grade level with what it's currently out there right now. So they'll have preferential access to the train station.
And so will those parking spaces be then with public access to and not just for the building? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, they'll be deeded for public access, but the revenues will be retained by the developer.
That's fine. I got it now. I got it now. Thank you.
No problem. But what was nice about it is we said, okay, yeah, we're, you know, basically having to pay, quote unquote, $1.1 million to construct the garage, but we were able to credit that as match. So effectively, we're getting that $1 million back in the form of the grant.
Okay, so we've added to the agenda the following: authorize the Norwalk Redevelopment Agency Executive Director to apply for all Connecticut Community Challenge Grant applications and execute the same. Does that work?
I would say enter into any and all agreements related to the Connecticut Community Challenge Grant.
Okay,
And obviously pending legal,
Pending.
our legal and corporation counsel review.
okay,
That should be
motion.
part of the motion, and I'll move it.
okay, second. Seconded. All in favor? That noise you heard when I was trying to make that motion was an 11-year-old big lab snoring suddenly. Any new business? Any updates?
Did that get
What's this?
approved? Sorry, did we take a vote on that one? I apologize.
Yes, we did.
Okay. Thank you.
Carried unanimously. Any other updates? Webster?
One thing, I could provide an update on Webster if you like. I was going to actually do a more detailed one. The proposals are due July 18th, but I can say we just had a really great set of in-person walkthroughs with the proposed applicants. So we offered as part of the RFP individual meetings. So we just wrapped those up last week. So we're looking forward to the proposal of July 18th, and I'll have more information in that regard. I know we talked about an open house. Now that we're here, we kept trying to find dates that work for us and work for the building and everything. The date that's looking decent, and I don't know if it's decent for you all, is the 27th of this month. So I figured while I had you all, I don't know if you might be able to check your calendar and see if that might work for you, or any other date that week that might help.
I may have a conflict that evening. So I'll try to change the appointment, depending on what everyone else is saying.
Okay.
David, you tried to say something, you're muted.
It's good for me.
What time is it?
I was thinking like 5 or 5:30. We could get together so I could have staff here too. You can meet them all, Mary. I know you probably haven't had a chance to do that yet.
Okay,
Can we have happy hour on the roof afterwards?
That's the plan. That is the plan. And so
no, wait a second. We've decided to move it from that building to Evandro's to save money.
Oh, Everito's. Well, we'll try to, if we could
Everito's.
do it, we could host it upstairs. I didn't want to book a private event because there's a pretty large charge. So if something happens and they book a private event, we'll relocate our after hours to the Everito's rooftop too. It's just about 6 stories lower.
Okay. Okay.
And also, sorry, John, I apologize, but
Okay.
if any of the members want more detail, if you want to like set up a meeting with me one-off, I'm happy to go through things. You know, so there's a lot of questions. We have a lot going on, and I know it's a lot to unpack in a 30, minute to an hour meeting. So I'm happy to host that as well, as detailed as you need.
When's
Thank you. I'll accept the offer.
All right, yeah, Mary, I'd love to. If you want to come here too, if you want to come check it out, or you want to do it in person or Zoom, whatever, just let me know.
That sounds great. Thank you. I'll be in touch.
Great.
When's the next meeting? July?
Yeah, we have
July,
July 12th.
let's check. All right, I'm available. Okay, anyone else taking vacation, going away?
I just
No?
have a conflict on that date.
Okay. Everyone else is good? I have nothing else to discuss. Anyone else? Nothing? I don't see anything. I don't hear anything. So I'll call for adjournment. All in favor? Carries unanimously. Have a good evening. Take care.
You take
Have
care.
a good night.
Good night.
Bye-bye.